I would like to introduce my old director from King College. I always call her Red Apple and Green Apple. Yes, she's my Green Apple. So give it for Jennifer Ball.
And so my sidekick today, I'm sure most of you know this lovely lady, but this is a Winthrop Think College graduate, Mrs. Shanika. So we'll only talk about me for about 2 seconds, and then we're going to get right into talking about her and all the amazing things that she can do. But I'm a consultant for North and South Carolina for transition. And so transition, we're always transitioning, but specifically into adulthood has been my experience. I was a classroom teacher a million years ago. I'm not going to tell how old I am. I am a parent of a child with a disability, and I have a PhD in special education. So one thing that I have learned in my years of working in North and South Carolina and all over the United States is self-determination, self-advocacy, single most important qualities a human can have. Not a person with a disability, not a person without a disability. In general, all of us, it is the single important skills that we have. Here is a picture of graduation day for Nunu when she got that beautiful diploma, and we'll talk a little bit about that program, but we're going to play a game really quickly. Don't read what's on the screen because I'm going to read it to you. So every time I say the words self-advocacy, I would like for you to stand up and then sit back down, okay? And I'm going to do it kind of quickly when I'm reading it, so I just want you to stand up and then sit back down. You want to demonstrate for me now?
Yes.
All right. Self-advocacy. All right, so I'm going to read this to you. All right, you make sure everybody stands up. Okay, self-advocacy is what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. Self-advocacy means understanding your strengths and weaknesses and developing goals and being assertive. Self-advocacy also means making decisions. Self-advocacy also means communicating your needs and making decisions. Self-advocacy is one of the, it's easy once you have awareness and determination. Self-advocacy skills are the goals for all students. So what did you guys do every time I said self-advocacy? Who do you think you're standing up for? Yourself. That's right. So that's an awesome way to introduce the concept when you're working with young people, because advocacy is a hard word to say, much less try and teach the skills. Self-determination. This is probably my favorite picture of us together. But is believing and knowing about yourself. All of that sounds really, really simple. If you break it down like this, there's a lot of research definitions out there. Here are the core components of self-determination. So you see there's a lot of skills. We have to teach students and young people a lot of skills before they're an advocate. And I'm going to give you an example of why it's so important that it is meshed with academics. Because if you have a young person with Down syndrome, a young person with an IEP, you need to make sure that when you're going to these IEP meetings, talking to people with a person-centered planning, that we are meshing self-determination into the IEP. And I saw on you guys' website that you have a person coming specifically, or has talked to you guys specifically about IEPs and how to be the advocate. That is so important. I cannot stress that enough. Okay, so did anybody get to-go food today? Anybody do a drive-through at all?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so I worked the farmer's market with individuals with Down syndrome and autism this morning, and so I got up at 6. Anybody else up at 6? Okay, so drive-through. That was breakfast. Okay, so where did you go for drive-through?
McDonald's.
McDonald's. What'd you get?
Big breakfast.
Big breakfast. Okay, so here he is driving, orders the big breakfast. She says to him that'll be $5.50. I don't know how much he is, making that up. So then he gets to the window, he hands her a 20, and so she hands him back $2 and the receipt. He pulls off. He looks down and sees that he has $2. What are you going to do?
I'm going back.
You whipping that car right back around because you're going to get your money, right? Okay, well think about this. So you got a student who's not really confident of their math skills, and they're not really confident in general. Are they going to get their money? Mm-mm. So that's why it's so important that self-determination and self-advocacy become a part of academics. Because once we are confident in those, and there's lots of strategies to teach that. Next dollar strategies, cents pile strategy. There's so many ways to teach a person who may not be confident in the change part, calculating numbers. There's strategies. And Shanika practiced a lot of those in the cafe on campus. And I would go to the people that work there and I was like, I want you to shortchange her. I want you to not give her enough money. Then on top of that, I want you to give her too much money because you got to teach honesty too. Because if somebody gives you more than what you're supposed to get. And so teachers do that in the classroom. Teachers do different type things. So that's not just math. We could go on all day long and talk about self-determination. But the reasons that we are going to focus on self-determination, parents, teachers, educators, every human should focus on that. The Olmstead decision is a Supreme Court case. If you already know what it is, I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell it again. Two ladies, this was back a long time ago. I was alive, but not everyone was alive. Two ladies were in an institution, and the doctor said that they could leave and go live out on their own. And the institution decided that they did not think that those ladies could live out on their own. And so those ladies ended up staying there when they could have moved into a different environment. They sued the Supreme Court decision. They won, saying that they both had intellectual disabilities. And so that gives a lot of rights to independent living centers and moving out of that idea of institution. The spirit of the law, when we look at IDEA and ADA, we look at preferences, strengths, and interests. So let's just be honest. We all know that it's the law that when our students hit a certain age that they have to be invited to the IEP meeting. Participation and attendance are very different. So how many of you, when you were 14 years old, you wanted your parent and your teacher to plan your future? I wanted to be a rock star. When I was in 8th grade, now Jesus did not give me any kind of voice to sing with, so my choir director asked me to lip sync, so that was a good choice, a good sign that I wasn't going to make it, But I had to have backup plans, right? And my parents, my teachers, and everyone had to help support me through those backup plans. Well, if we have a 14-year-old that's not attending the IEP meeting, doesn't know about the IEP meeting, doesn't have any of these self-advocacy skills, we're not speaking up. We're not talking about the things that we want to do. But all of these things are things we have to teach young people. They can't just show up to middle school and a middle school teacher do it. They can't just show up to high school and a high school do it. This has to be ongoing. Self-awareness, all of those things start very early. And you're more likely to have successful post-school outcomes, like this wonderful woman, if we do start early. And I've talked about the IEP, including self-determination skills and IEP goals. The person that comes and talks to you about IEP meetings will tell you that you are a participant in the IEP meeting until your kid says you can't be. Even if they're 18, 19, 20, 21, even though at 18 they could be an adult, you are still a participant until they are no longer served under IDEA. One of my jobs right now is I facilitate a grant for a school system that includes a community college that provides services for students with intellectual disabilities, and parents are still coming to IEP meetings. Parents are still helping students make decisions. Sometimes you may get information that is incorrect. Always ask questions. We have an amazing center in North Carolina that helps parents with IEP meetings, and there's lots of advocates that will look over IEPs and help you. I had to sue a school system because my stepson's IEP was so terrible. But we're not getting into IEPs. But the things that I want to hone in on is the self-determination skills that we talked about. All those components lead to self-determination, lead to self-advocacy. So what can we do as parents? We want to encourage our children to make choices every single day. It is much easier to pick out our children's clothes when they are 4 years old, 5 years old, but if we don't start somewhere with making choices, my daughter had a hoedown. Now, I don't know if you know what a hoedown is. I'm super southern. A hoedown is when you lay in the floor and pitch a fit. Because she did not want to wear the clothes that I had laid out for her. Okay, well, she was, I think, about 2 or 3, so she was showing some self-determination and that she wanted to have some choice making, but I had to show some I'm in charge, I'm the mama, right? So we went to daycare naked one time, and she supposedly remembers this. She's a teenager now, but she learned that, you know, I've got time when I can make choices, and I got time when I got to listen to the boss, because all of us do that now. We all have a boss we got to listen to at some point in time. So encourage your child to set priorities. My motto in life is high expectations, high results. You should always expect as much as possible out of everyone that you surround yourself with, every person you come into contact with, because if you have low expectations, they will meet those low expectations. We want to talk to our students and our children about goal setting, the concept of accommodations. If we're not educating our young people about their disability, then we're doing a disservice. They have to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, just like we have to know what our strengths and weaknesses are. When my daughter was in 3rd grade, I wanted her to come to her IEP meeting, and the teacher was like, but we're going to talk about disability. And so I looked at Kelsey and I was like, hey, we're going to talk about your disability. You good with that? She's like, we good. So we all went into the meeting. But she knew in her first surgery what that surgery was for, or what that was. Yes, that's the same picture. This is my favorite picture. This was actually one of our very first sessions when Shanika came on at her post-secondary program. One thing that was a big mission of ours, while we did live and breathe inclusion, we wanted to make sure that all other college students also lived and breathed in inclusion. And instead of talking about our disability, we were going to talk about our abilities. And so we called all of our functions ability awareness events. And so this was actually one of the very first ones. And that was the end. And I don't know who took that picture, but they ended up sending it to us because we were pumped because it was the last one. And by the end of all of our ability awareness events, I mean, we had hundreds. I mean, there were a couple events where we had thousands of people. And so it got to the point where no one listened to me talk anymore. It was all, because no one wanted to hear anything I had to say, did they? Okay, so one of the most important parts, like we've talked about, is the person-centered approach. Everything is about the student, and we do have to help facilitate that. And this is a beautiful picture of the Down Syndrome Conference from a few years ago where she presented. We've talked about that, how we want to infuse things into, I'm trying to go fast. Here are some strategies and tips and I'm going to send this presentation so you guys can share it, because I have a lot of information in here that I may not specifically say, but you'll go home and say, hey, I really wish I would have remembered what she said, and that way it's on here. These are really important. A lot of these are, obviously common sense. Find out what your child is doing at school. Look for social opportunities. This place is amazing. Like, we need to live. The whole world needs to move into Gigi's Playhouse. Like, this is how the world needs to be. And we need to look for these opportunities when they're not natural, because Gigi's Playhouse is not for everyone. Can't come here. Like some people live too far away. Some people don't have access to this place. And so we need to figure out how to create and get our kids into other social opportunities that do the same things that this place does. And then social presence is so very important, because, back in the day, our students were not even in class with other individuals, much less social events, church, work, but now we are, right? That's where we are, and that's where we're going to continue to go. So social presence is so important. Everywhere that any individual can go, we need to be taking students. We need to encourage teachers, encourage school systems to make sure. I wanted to take 26 kids with varying disabilities to the Biltmore House, because you should all visit the Biltmore House if you live in North Carolina. And I had to go to the school board to get approval for that many individuals to go, when any other class could have gone all on their own. So basically, that I had to prove to them that we weren't going to get in the way at the Biltmore House. So of course we went. We had an amazing opportunity, and we had our picture made in front of the Biltmore